Hi, my name is Jacob Berkowitz.
I'm Dan Finegold.
And this is, we're hoping, the inaugural episode of First Film. Dan, what is this podcast about?
First Film is a movie podcast where we review and generally talk about the first film of a particular director. And today's episode is Wes Anderson.
Yeah, generally, we're going to find out most directors' first films probably aren't their best. If you remember a director's movie and you're like, wow, I love that, generally not their first. We're going to see if that holds true for most directors. And today we're looking at Wes Anderson's first film, Bottle Rocket. I think Wes Anderson is generally probably one of the most famous living filmmakers.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely why we chose to start with him, because everyone knows Wes Anderson. And he has a very distinct style.
Visual style,
I mean, a lot of directors are super good directors, but you don't look at, like, a frame from their movies.
And you're like,
and you're instantly like, oh yeah, Spielberg.
Absolutely, this is a Chris Nolan frame. I mean, sometimes you can tell, but
sure,
like,
of course.
Wes Anderson has, like, such a specific and distinct visual language that, like, instantly recognizable, parodiable on SNL, and everyone's like, this is Wes Anderson. Yeah, everyone can recognize Wes Anderson if you're even passingly familiar with his films. And amongst, like, M. Night Shyamalan and, like, Chris Nolan, I guess, like, Wes Anderson's probably amongst the most instantly recognizable in terms of name of working filmmakers.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's, before we hop into Bottle Rocket, I guess if you are for some reason listening to this and don't know who Wes Anderson is, brief rundown of Wes Anderson's life up until Bottle Rocket.
Please take it away, baby.
All right, so Wesley Wales Anderson, born May 1st, 1969, Houston, Texas, to mother Texas Ann Anderson, who was a real estate agent and also an archaeologist.
It makes sense that, it makes sense that Wes Anderson grew up in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah,
like,
mom's
it shouldn't
name
be
is
surprising
Texas,
at
and
all.
she was an archaeologist. And father Melver Leonard Anderson, who ran an advertising and PR firm.
And he lived in a tree, correct?
He did live in a treehouse. So, I'm assuming if mom's an archaeologist and dad ran a PR firm, they were probably coming from money.
Yeah.
And, that shows in his movies. Wes was the second of three Anderson brothers, with whom he made silent films on his dad's Super 8 camera. And unfortunately, Anderson's parents divorced when he was 8 years old, which also
is a Wes Anderson movie.
While processing the disillusionment of his parents' marriage, Wes was allegedly a bit of a troublemaker. He misbehaved at school. And the school young Wes attended was St. John's School.
It was Rushmore, no?
Okay, so it was a private school in his hometown of Houston. He graduated there in 1987, and his high school alma mater would later go on to feature prominently as the location for his breakout
that's where he
film
shot
Rushmore.
it? That makes
Actually, he did go to Rushmore High
Maybe
School.
you'll touch on this, but one of Wes Anderson's brothers is an artist who does, like,
The
a
covers
ton of the
for his
artwork
Criterion films, yes.
Yeah.
I don't go into it in his bio, but yeah, and he does some voice work in some of his films.
Right.
So his brother was an artist. Wes Anderson believably grew up in a Wes Anderson movie.
Makes sense.
During his time at St. John's, Wes was apparently famous for his lavish and complex play productions. More Rushmore. After high school, Wes went on to pursue a degree in philosophy from UT Austin, where he met and developed a friendship with actor and frequent collaborator Owen Wilson. The two would go on to create a short film, Bottle Rocket, which would go on to play at the Sundance Film Festival. There, it attracted the attention of one James L. Brooks, famed director and longtime Simpsons producer, the guy who made The Simpsons.
Oh.
Not Matt Groening. I'm not sure.
We're not talking about the feature-length Bottle Rocket, right? This is like 15-minute black and white jazz music Bottle Rocket.
In 1994, he got like $500,000 to make a short film that was going to be a feature-length film. Believe it or not, you really can't make a feature film on $500,000, generally speaking, and especially not if you're Wes Anderson. So
True.
when the cash and film stock ran out, they converted it to a short film. It played at Sundance, and James L. Brooks, who directed Broadcast News, which is one of my favorite films, and he also produced The Simpsons, saw it and was like, this is solid. So he was able to secure Anderson and Owen Wilson the funds they needed to turn their short film into a feature film, and it turned into the feature film Bottle Rocket, which we will be discussing today.
Am I understanding correctly that the short film Bottle Rocket was meant to be a feature film, but they just ran out of money, and they were like, it's done now?
In 1992, when they started filming Bottle Rocket, they were like, okay, we're gonna make a feature film. This is based on what I've read. It was originally supposed to be the feature film, but they ran out of cash, and they, I guess, either had filmed the ending or had filmed enough, or they were like, okay, we're about to run out of money. We got to convert this to a short. And they wound up scuttlebutting the original production of Bottle Rocket, turned it into a short. James L. Brooks liked it at Sundance, and then he was like, you guys want to turn this into a feature? For the record, the feature film lost a shit ton of money for James L. Brooks and everyone involved. It cost $5 million to make. It made like 500,000 at the box office.
Not Owen Wilson, sorry. Wes Anderson's like first 3, maybe even 4 movies all lost money, right?
No, not his first bunch of movies. So Bottle Rocket lost money.
Yeah, Rushmore.
Rushmore made money.
Did it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, the next few did make money. Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums made money, and then the next few films he made, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou lost a ton of money.
Okay.
Darjeeling Limited lost a ton of money. I think even Fantastic Mr. Fox lost a bit of money.
Interesting.
And then Moonrise Kingdom was the first Wes film in a while to make any money back, but that's because they gave him like a shoestring budget for Moonrise Kingdom. They're like, okay, make this on like very little money, relatively speaking. Like,
Right.
It was not like
it was only what his parents bring home in like a year.
Yeah, so it was only like $12 million. But yeah, the first film was not at all a success commercially, but critically it garnered enough like accolades for them to be like, hey, you want to make another one? And I think even Martin Scorsese like considered it like one of his favorite
I
films
read
of the
that too,
90s.
that Martin Scorsese really loved, like
Bottle
considered
Rocket.
Bottle Rocket a must-see, which is interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll talk about why that is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Bottle Rocket. Before we talk about our thoughts on Bottle Rocket, talk about a broad plot. If we want to get into specifics here, we can. So it starts, Owen Wilson is breaking his brother.
His brother Luke Wilson, Anthony.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson is Dignant,
which is
Dignant or Dignant.
I think it's Dignan.
It's extremely Texas.
Yeah, it's not a real human being name. It's only found in Texas. So Dignan, played by Owen Wilson, breaks his brother Anthony, played
out
by
of a voluntary
mental rehabilitation center or whatever. And they hop on a bus, and Dignan presents Anthony with a 75-year plan for the rest of their life, where they will become thieves.
Rich off of crime.
Yeah,
and
they're
then
gonna
retire.
They're gonna start thieving, and they're gonna attract the attention of a master thief played by James Caan, who really is just like, he runs a lawn mowing business or whatever.
It's a front.
Yes, it's a front.
It's a crime front.
It's a money laundering front, probably.
I love the line. Just because it's a front doesn't mean the landscaping doesn't have to get done.
Yeah, it's very goofy in a very Wes Anderson way.
That guy's name is Hank, right?
I believe James Caan plays
so,
a character named Hank. Yeah, and they begin their thievery by robbing Anthony's mom's house.
Yeah,
and Anthony gets pissed when Dignan steals a pair of his mom's earrings that were not pre-approved for the robbery, and Anthony has to wind up returning his mom's earrings via his sister, who
is a precocious little child who speaks like an adult.
A recurring Wes Anderson trope
we will continue to see
of emotionally mature children talking down to immature and emotionally stunted adults. So robbery goes off without a hitch. They bring
because it's his mom's house.
Yes, they bring I forget what the character's name. Bob. Yes, they bring Bob into the team as the getaway driver because he's the only guy with a car. And they go on a real heist where there are variables in play, and they rob, I believe, a bookstore. Yeah, and that also goes pretty well. It goes well.
It's goofy, but I think Owen Wilson calls it perfect.
Yeah, they wind up putting a lot of money into tiny little bags, and they find people on the floor who are not expected to be there, but
they successfully get the money, and then they go out of town to lay low for a little bit.
They go into a tiny little hotel where they plan to go on the lam for a brief period of time, and Anthony meets Inez, who is she's a cleaning lady at the motel.
It's
I'm
a
not
motel.
sure. Yeah, she's a cleaning lady at the motel, and Anthony immediately falls in love with her. She does not speak much English. He does not speak much Spanish, but they fall in love. And yeah,
it's unbelievably charming.
Yes,
I love it all.
The way they're able to convey a romance with almost no dialogue, very, very inspiring.
There's a moment where Inez opens a locket and like a little photograph falls up, like a tiny photograph, like the size of like
recognize who's on it,
like a pinky thumbnail. And Luke Wilson picks it up and he goes,
"You're beautiful.
Wow, you look exactly the same in this."
It's his sister.
My sister. And then he holds it up to her face. This tiny little picture.
It's very dumb.
She looks just like you. Can I keep this?
It's a very Wes Anderson bit where no one's like quite able to communicate with each other, but they're trying to like play it off, and it's very charming.
It's very cute.
Then Bob winds up running away with the getaway car because his brother got thrown in jail because the cops found his pot farm.
It's
on
Bob's pot
yes.
farm, though.
Bob's brother gets in trouble for Bob's pot farm, so he has to go home, take care of his brother, and Dignan is very pissed. They wind up...
This is a great movie for pissed off Owen Wilson.
Yes, Owen Wilson gets angry a lot, but he uses, and I wrote a note, he uses like very specific, almost like PR talk the entire time. Right. HR talk. He talks like an HR representative for a big business.
Because he's taking himself seriously.
Very
he's
seriously.
Running the crime gang. This was a really fun role to see Owen Wilson in. And I don't know if there's any other movie where he quite plays a role like this.
I was going to get into it a bit later, but
we can save it.
You've seen Nightcrawler, right?
Yeah.
So he very much reminded me of the character of Lou Bloom, Jake Gyllenhaal's character, where they're doing very shady, illegal
treating crime like a business, because these are not poor people. These people are not resorting to crime because they're forced to. They're crime would be a fun and interesting life for us to have. Here is a plan for how to make it work. We will run this like a business.
Yes, we're going to take ourselves very seriously. We have meticulous plans. We are going to take control of this. We're going to become the best, and we're going to maximize our abilities. And so we need to speak like we're taking ourselves seriously. It's a very interesting character, and obviously this is a much lighter take on that character of crime through the lens of like pull yourself up by your bootstraps lingo. It's very odd.
The tone is extremely light, if that isn't clear yet.
Yes, it's neoliberal crime through a comedy lens as opposed to a nihilistic lens.
Yeah.
So anyways, because Bob has left with the car, they can no longer remain in this motel because they have no means of escaping. So they have to leave and try to go back home, essentially. But before they leave, Anthony gives Dignan an envelope to give to Inez full of money.
What we later learn is $500.
Tons of, basically the rest of what they've stolen. Inez...
You don't tip the help $500! That's unacceptable! That's unforgivable!
You don't give a $500 tip to the housekeeper! That's inappropriate! That's inexcusable!
I'm so happy we picked this because we will get to hear you do Owen Wilson impressions for the rest of the day.
Owen and Luke, they sound
exactly the same.
Also,
so does their brother.
The third Wilson is
what's his name? Andrew?
I think I'll look it up.
Yeah, we don't have to guess. We can know for sure. I was right. It was Andrew. Andrew Wilson. Okay, wonderful. They all sound alike. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, Inez, through a translator, tells Dignan to tell Anthony that...
Tell Anthony I love him.
Yes.
What? Tell him I love him.
But Dignan is very confused because this translator is male, does not know Inez is telling this translator to tell Anthony that she's in love with him, so he just doesn't say anything to Dignan, just does not bring it up. Inez's love for Anthony does not go mentioned. They wind up going on the run, they steal a car, it breaks down, Dignan and Anthony get into a fight when Dignan discovers that Anthony tipped the help $500.
You don't give a $500 tip to the housekeeper! That's inappropriate! That's inexcusable!
And they go their separate ways. I forget what Anthony winds up doing, but Dignan goes back to work for James Caan's character.
Yeah, Anthony. Well, I think we need to mention that Owen Wilson slashes.
Yeah, cuts him.
What is it? Slashes Luke in the face with a screwdriver in this moment.
A moment of violence that seems very out of place in this otherwise very meticulously crafted, very serene and goofy movie.
Yeah, and Wes Anderson has a lot of moments of like brief violence, but like this in particular, I was like, what? I thought the movie was taking a serious turn.
Yeah, because
this could kill someone.
A lot of
like,
it is,
this character might be dead right now.
In later films, a lot of the violence is, I don't want to say flat, but it's filmed at a very flat angle. It's very symmetrical. I noticed it, and I was kind of surprised when I was watching the French Dispatch trailer a while ago. I'm like, wow, this shootout seems very out of place in a Wes Anderson movie. But in rewatching a lot of his films,
there's a shootout in the
Grand Budapest. There's a shootout in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. There's violence in a lot of his movies.
I think every movie has like
moments of violence.
We could get into how
later,
like what that says about Wes Anderson's attitude towards violence, because I think it's very interesting the way he does it. But anyway, so after Luke Wilson gets slashed, he goes and him and Bob go back home and take up like a ton of odd jobs. You see them like delivering papers.
They're just
and
getting
being valets.
Yeah.
And just doing whatever they can.
But they try to like establish themselves as like members of society, whereas Owen Wilson's character Dignan still harbors this dream of becoming a thief because it's interesting to him, and he falls back into working at the landscaping company with James Caan, and eventually he rides up to Dignan in a motorbike and all yellow.
Technically, we haven't seen the motorbike yet. He just looks like a banana. He got a ride from Applejack, a member of Hank's crew.
In a yellow jumpsuit, and he tries to entice Anthony back into thievery.
And he apologizes, which is also a theme that we see in pretty much every Wes Anderson movie.
Yes.
There's an apology scene.
Yes.
Basically, I think at this point in the movie.
What do you mean?
Like in terms of moment, like, like more than halfway done a little bit. And there's an apology.
This apology scene also, is this the point in the movie where he tries to apologize to Bob and immediately their relationship?
No, not yet. He hasn't met it back up with Bob yet.
Yeah.
But he does successfully apologize to Luke.
Yes.
Like, I think I regret a lot of the things that were said.
Yes.
Particularly by me.
Yes. So eventually they get back together. He tries to apologize to Bob. He doesn't feel
he doesn't feel that he owes Bob an apology.
Yes.
But Bob says, "Look, I don't need an apology. I don't expect an apology." And I was like, apologize to you.
Yeah, it goes totally south. They immediately fight. It goes south very quickly.
Backyard now. This is my house.
Yeah, but whatever. They wind up deciding that they will all partake in one last heist together. I want
to give him a hug.
Yes, it's very awkward, the entire thing. And
yeah, so this is the big heist.
The big
that
finale.
Pretty much the whole movie has been building
towards. And Owen Wilson's character Dignan plans the entire thing. That's the one condition. Anthony says that he will do this heist if Dignan plans the entire thing. He plans it, and they scout it, they train for it, they prep for weeks, and the
three conditions were that Owen Wilson plans the entire thing, that Bob is in, and that Luke Wilson can get in on this jumpsuit action.
Yes, he needs one of those all-yellow jumpsuits.
Just so we don't leave any loose ends, the B-plot also gets tied up when Owen Wilson finally slips that...
Oh, yes, that some guy said that he loved...
He said he was in love with you. Was he translating?
Strange. Translating?
No, he said it in English.
He was talking in English, and I was like, what?
Which is so fucking stupid.
It's so funny.
Dignan's dumb, right? He's very dumb.
Well, yeah, he's a Wes Anderson movie type of smart, which is like a moron. He's an organized idiot, pretty much.
Very meticulous about his stupidity. There's also a scene previously where Bob and Dignan and Anthony are all at dinner with
Hank and the crew.
Yeah, and and Bob's brothers, who are recurring minor characters. It kind of follows like
comedy movie logic where like there's a big brother who just like bullies a grown adult.
Yeah, the little brother. And these are two character types who appear in Anderson's first two films, and then you never see them again.
Which I think is good.
Yeah,
I
they're
feel like
like-
Wes Anderson kind of felt an obligation to. Well, I
They're
don't
like
know. It
very
feels like,
simpleton bro type
It
characters.
feels like he-
They're
like
like
the-
stock jock characters.
yeah, for sure. Like the closest thing to like a category of movie that Wes Anderson thought to fit this in was like teen comedy.
I was gonna say like teen comedy or broad.
It
like
reminds me of like Step Brothers, like Will Ferrell comedy logic, where
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
an
yeah.
adult but also
An idiot, a child.
an idiot child. Yeah.
And he refines that type of like sense of adults with arrested development or immaturities later on, but these characters feel very broad in
but
the
he
sense that
generally
they're just
drops like all the villain tropes. There are very few villains in Wes Anderson movies.
yeah, there are assholes or there are like people who make like shitty decisions, but there aren't like outright like generic trope villain
there are
characters.
exceptions, but for the most part,
Generally,
that
like
holds
there are
true.
the pirates in Life Aquatic, but they're hardly characters. They don't get names.
Yeah, there's the
Oh, and there's Willem Dafoe's character
and
in
Adrian Brody,
Brody
in Grand Budapest.
yeah.
And also, I'm thinking Moonrise
they're-
Kingdom that's Luke Hedges?
Lucas Hedges,
Lucas
yes.
Hedges is pretty villainous in that.
Yes, but even in, I was going to say, in Grand Budapest, Adrian Brody's character takes on, like, a thematic importance, or, like,
Yeah.
like he has some stake thematically or ideologically, but, like, in Bottle Rocket, these brothers, they mean nothing
That's
to
true.
the
That's true. I
theme.
mean, Adrian Brody is a good villain in that because he's like motivated and
Yes,
like has a
and he's a
reason
Nazi,
to behave like an
basically.
asshole.
Yeah.
Whereas like this is just he's got to be Bob's older brother. Bob is 26. This guy's at the very least almost 30, and
Yeah.
he's just bullying his little brother.
I mean, it does tie into, like, recurring themes of, like, familial strife and, like, just bickering
Wes Anderson
families.
gets better at that
Yes.
as it goes on, though.
More interestingly,
Yeah.
like, developed themes. But, yeah, so there's a fight when they're at dinner. Bob gets into a fight with his brothers, and Hank steps up for Bob, defends him, tells the bully brothers off, and they walk away. That's the scene that we
He does.
missed.
He like puts them in an arm bar.
Yeah, it's very
he
funny 'cause
physically
Hank
dominates
is
the
much
bully.
smaller than the brothers, and honestly older. But fuck it, James Caan can do whatever the fuck he
fine.
wants. So yes, back to the final heist.
And then they do the final
They
big
all
heist.
show up in the yellow jumpsuits, and it goes fucking
Spoilers, it
horribly.
goes very, very badly.
Anything that can go wrong does go
The
wrong.
crew that Hank sends them with is
Old and
are
incompetent.
very old and incompetent. Yeah.
Who is it?
There's Applejack and Kumar.
Yes,
Kumar
Kumar
is having like an Alzheimer's flare up where he like literally doesn't know
cannot
where he
remember
is.
how to open the safe.
Won't stay in one place. Is just wandering around.
Owen Wilson's like, did you ever have the touch to lose, man?
Did you ever have a touch to lose, man?
Because he's like, I lost the touch.
I don't think you ever had a
had to
touch in the
touch it.
first place.
Yes, and Applejack winds up getting shot because Bob drops
He doesn't
his
get
gun.
shot. Bob
Oh, right.
accidentally discharges his gun.
And Applejack has a heart
and
attack.
Applejack collapses, has a heart attack. Yeah.
So-
yeah. The crew who, well, they're robbing. What even is that?
It's like
place?
a
Some kind
meat
of
packing factory.
Yeah, something like that.
Factory or something.
some generic warehouse
Factory,
or something.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the employees come back,
Come back from lunch.
early.
You
and
never
they're
come
all-
back from lunch. You're
We
never
do
back.
sometimes.
Yeah. So they come back. The entire thing goes to shit. Everyone scrambles back to the van. But they forget the keys. or
Applejack
something.
has the keys,
Yes.
and he is still in the elevator because the elevator got stuck.
Yes.
So Owen Wilson sends Kumar and Bob away.
Yes,
And then
they
Luke
run away.
and Owen argue about who's gonna go back into the building
To-
and rescue Applejack and get
and
the keys.
inevitably get caught. Like, if you go
It's-
back in there, you are going to get caught. The police will catch you.
Probably a suicide mission, yeah.
So Dignan insists that he be the one to do it, and he winds up, obviously, there's a frantic foot race away from the cops. He gets caught, beaten, and arrested. The final scene of the movie is Dignan in jail. Bob and Anthony come to visit him. And they talk, and at the very end, Dignan, as Anthony and Bob are about to leave, makes a remark like, okay, here's the breakaway plan. And you're not sure whether or not he's joking because he's in vivid detail describing...
Did you bring the grappling hook?
Yeah, like this plan that he has envisioned for an escape, and it echoes kind of the beginning of the film where Dignan insists on breaking Anthony out of the mental health institution. Right. And you're not sure whether he's serious or not. And I'm not sure if the film... or if it's supposed to be known one way or another.
No, I think it's definitely a joke.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, for sure. Because there's a moment of tension, and then they all laugh, and then Owen Wilson holds up his handcuffs, and he goes, "Isn't it funny that you used to be in the nut house, and now I'm in jail?" And then he walks away.
I'm not sure he always intended it for... I think that's maybe... and maybe I could be entirely misreading it. I think that's Anthony... realizing that his friends are not in on the joke, they're not prepared, they are scared, they don't want to do this, and it's him maybe trying to save face. I think
Anthony or
Dignan. I think Dignan
okay.
realizes that Anthony and Bob are not in at all, scared, not prepared, and I think it's finally a moment of him busting out of this sense of like...
Interesting. He was joking depending on their reactions.
I think it's a moment of character growth because the entire...
I definitely agree with that.
Film, yeah. I get a sense that he's delusional. Like, he's crazy.
That's true. He has... I love when he's flipping through, like, the 50-year plan and gets to, like, living
70...
into the 21st century.
Yeah, and you're like, this is a crazy person. This is a person who does not live on the same planet as us. Or he does, and he's, like... trying to like power of positive thinking himself into his own reality, and finally at the very end he realizes that like this hasn't been working. I need to live in the reality I'm in. I cannot keep meticulously crafting this universe that I want to live in. I have to live in the universe I am assigned to. And so
I definitely broadly agree with that. I just interpreted that moment as him like gaining the awareness to like make fun of himself.
Okay, that's fair.
But I mean, ultimately, the character arc is exactly the same.
He winds in the same place where he is kind of forced to realize the reality he lives in.
Yeah. And then Owen Wilson walks away in slow motion.
Yes, iconic Wes Anderson type shot. You have someone walking in slow motion.
Owen Wilson specifically walking in slow motion.
Yeah, it's frequently Owen Wilson. It bears mentioning, if for some reason you're listening to this and have not seen many Wes Anderson films, Wes Anderson likes to use the same actors a lot. It is true of many directors that they have a crew they like to work with, but Wes Anderson especially seemingly can, if you've been in one Wes Anderson movie,
you're just in the crew.
Seemingly he can convince you to play the smallest part in any of his upcoming movies.
Yeah, I saw Grand Budapest earlier today, and like I love that he just like shoves Jason Schwartzman in there. Like roles that don't necessarily even need to exist. I kind of feel like Wes Anderson just wants to
put his friends in.
Yeah,
like there's
which I love.
Grand Budapest.
And Bill Murray's part of that crew too.
There's a moment where...
And Bill Murray doesn't get special treatment either. Bill Murray is often in Wes Anderson movies as like the smallest
idiots, assholes, nothing parts.
Or absolutely nothing, like Darjeeling Unlimited. Darjeeling Limited. I always call it Unlimited. Where
he's in the
no
first
lines,
scene,
no lines, just a guy who misses his train.
And then Adrian Brody's like, "This is my movie. I'm the lead."
And then Adrian Brody with legs that are twice as long as Bill Murray's entire body. Slender Man's past him.
But yeah, I was gonna say, like in Grand Budapest especially, like there's this entire cadre of actors who are a part of this like key Hotel Key Alliance or whatever it's called.
Yeah, some secret society.
And he just shoehorns Bob Balaban, frequent collaborator. Owen Wilson plays like a small like part as one of those like what is that called?
Bellhop?
No, he's not a bellhop. What is concierge?
Oh,
he's a concierge.
Yeah.
Bill Murray's a concierge. Like all of his frequent collaborators just get 2 seconds to play concierges and that's it. But yeah, Owen Wilson frequently walks in slow motion in these films. Thoughts on Bottle Rocket? Do you like Bottle Rocket?
Yes, I love this movie.
You love it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I adore this.
Why?
I love the characters, the way the characters all interact with each other. I think, and this is a theme in a lot of Wes Anderson movies, just like, I think it's a very refreshing way to like show masculinity.
Interesting.
It's
Go
like
on.
I feel like Wes Anderson is like particularly great at showing like non-toxic masculinity, because Wes Anderson's movies are generally mostly men,
Yes.
And, like, they're men losing their tempers and getting mad at each other and then, like, apologizing.
Lots
and,
of brothers.
And growing.
Lots of stories about brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just really love watching that. And I love Owen Wilson's character so much. I love
such an
Dignity.
idiot.
He's so stupid, but, like, I don't know. I just love him kicking people out of the group, having a little sidebar with Luke Wilson, and then coming back and being like, I lost my cool there for a second.
Yeah, we didn't
I
talk
apologize.
about the first fight when they're planning the first, I think, bookshop
Yeah, and
heist.
Bob won't stop touching the gun.
And Owen Wilson's like, I'm gonna kick you out of the group.
You're out of the group. You're out of the group. Hell, I don't think I'm in the group either.
There's no group. Yeah, I think that's interesting because maybe it's because when I first started watching Wes Anderson movies, I did not even conceive of masculinity as like a lens through which to view films, but I have not approached his films through that lens. I think of family as a recurring theme. I think of divorce as a recurring theme. Definitely. Or like the disillusionment of family. And mostly that, but I mean, yeah, no. And also I think like loss of innocence and maturity a lot, because the first Wes Anderson film,
they're pretty much all in a way coming of age films. I don't want to say all, but like
a lot of them are
the majority of them, I would say.
Well, we didn't talk about this, and I wanted to talk about it earlier. Like, what was your relationship to Wes Anderson and his movies prior to, I guess, prepping for this episode of the podcast? Like, how many of your movies? How many
Positive.
of his
I had
movies?
seen almost all of them, except Darjeeling Limited was the one that I hadn't seen.
Yeah, you had seen Bottle Rocket before this? This was not.
Oh no! Sorry, and also Bottle Rocket.
Okay, you've seen both of them.
But then I had seen everything else, so I definitely liked Wes Anderson, and was into him. I remember in like middle school.
Yeah.
Or maybe early high school was when I discovered Wes Anderson and just watched a lot of the movies, and generally liked all of them.
Yeah, I remember the first Wes Anderson film I ever saw. There's a local indie movie theater where we live. There's the Malvern Theater that is the closest to an indie theater we have here in Nassau County, Long Island.
Yeah, come to our houses and murder us, please.
Please don't. And they had been showing advertisements for this very bright pastel movie with a studded a star-studded cast: Bill Murray, Ed Norton, who else is in it? Harvey Keitel, Tilda Swinton, Bruce Willis, Frances McDormand. I'm like, looks interesting, great cast, I'll go see it. It was Moonrise Kingdom, and I had never fallen in love with a movie before, and this was the first movie I ever fell in love with. I went to see it 5 times in a theater. The first time I ever went on a date with a girl to see a movie was Moonrise Kingdom. I think the 4th or 5th time I saw it. I just had a great relationship to that movie, and after that, I'm like, I'm in the tank for Wes Anderson. So prior to prepping to this podcast, I had seen all of his films. Some of them I hadn't seen in a while. Like Bottle Rocket, I hadn't seen probably since my freshman year of undergrad. So I had nothing but positive relationships to Wes Anderson prior to coming to this. But yeah, I knew I was gonna be okay with this movie. The first time I saw it, I was like, this is fine. I thought it was more interesting than me actually liking it. And this time around, I'm like, no, this is actually funny. The characters make sense in a Wes Anderson
hilarious.
movie. It's not my favorite Wes Anderson movie, but I have absolutely come to appreciate it as, on its own, independently, a very funny movie full of not stock Wes Anderson characters, but rough sketches that he would later go on to refine of people who are trying to like meticulously control their own lives and not necessarily adhering to the reality around them. I think one of the most enduring Wes Anderson themes is broken people, or just people who cannot accept reality as it is, trying to take meticulous control of their own lives and realizing that
they have to let go.
Can't.
Yeah. Which
I think makes sense, because I think obviously it makes sense thematically, considering like it's a interesting through line. These films have endured, they've attracted an audience. Seemingly there is something compelling about this idea of people wanting to take control of their own lives and having to realize that like life is chaos.
Well, I mean, that goes back to, like, I think that's what a coming of age movie is.
Yeah.
Is like setting out to accomplish something in order to improve your life, your relationship, whatever, and then realizing that like actually everything you encountered was meant to teach you that you need to change.
Yeah, you need to just let something change inside of you. But I also think it makes sense because of it ties into his visual style very neatly. I mean, what is like one of the most consistent criticisms of Wes Anderson films? And I mean, this is an apt criticism to say that he's like a meticulous tinkerer. There is like almost an obsessive attention to detail and a necessity to have just symmetry and balance. There's an obsession over like the placement of every prop in every frame. Like Anderson himself,
colors, camera movements. It's all very
specific.
planned out. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't suspect there's a lot of improv in these movies.
No, but like it's I think very telling to his style that his movies are about his obsessive need to control and create worlds.
Well, right, yeah, that's an excellent point.
Like,
and I think that's why they're so good. It's because they're honest, you know?
Yeah.
It's like Wes Anderson absolutely knows what he is, like the characters' arcs and like what needs to happen in these movies because he has personal experience there.
With it.
You know, he's got like rich parents and felt unconnected with the world and desperately tried to like control it by building his own little movie worlds.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at many times he's realized that like he needs to make compromises and like give up control a little bit.
And yet he doesn't.
To, like, well, I don't know what goes on in his personal life.
I don't know either.
In terms of the movies, yeah.
He absolutely does not relinquish control. Because
That's true.
I was going to say, in watching the rest of his films, a little bit beyond Bottle Rocket, the obsession to his particular brand and his aesthetic is only like
it only grows stronger. Yeah,
he finalizes, he metastasizes his own like aesthetic principles, and we could talk specifically about Bottle Rocket for a second. Like the color palette is not a Wes Anderson.
No, this is the most normal looking Wes Anderson movie. Yeah, I would say
there are brief flourishes of like his like pastel
there's
palettes.
Like one whip pan on the bus where we go from the bus driver to Owen and Luke.
He does love his whip pans.
There's the scene where, I mean, we talked about the slow motion. There's also a moment where Anthony is running through the motel and it's like we see a side profile of him while the camera
the tracking
scrolls
running
along
shot
with him, which is in all the movies.
There's almost, I don't think there are any snap zooms. Like
no, I don't think so.
So like these are, I guess, aesthetic flourishes that he'll later develop.
Thematically, it really feels like Wes Anderson, but like visually, stylistically, it kind of feels more like just a cookie cutter movie.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. Like, there are
Which isn't to say that it's badly filmed or anything.
No,
it's just filmed in a pretty normal way.
Like, he hasn't necessarily... And I mean, I think it's also a limitation of the budget.
It could also be the studio, too. Like, you know, I don't know how much control they had specifically with this movie, but it's possible that he wanted to go a little bit crazier, but he didn't have like 3 movies to build up goodwill to be trusted. I don't know.
I have no idea. I'm assuming that on a $5 million budget, he was generally given like free reign, and he just either didn't know, didn't care to, or didn't like want to.
I'm totally speculating.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just assuming that as an early filmmaker, he maybe just didn't.
That's very, very possible. Yeah.
I guess going back to this idea of the themes tying into his aesthetic values and principles, one of the frequent criticisms levied against him is that he is just like a pure ass, like his style is style for style's sake. There's no substance behind it. He just loves to meticulously craft his little doll houses for no real purpose. But I mean, you could not enjoy his personal brand or style, but I think to just throw it away as meaningless or useless or just purely aesthetic for aesthetic's sake is, I think, maybe not understanding his movies fully. Like, he is all about characters who try to take control of their worlds and try to, like, there's a moment in Bottle Rocket too where during the first, I think, break-in at Anthony's mom's house,
oh yeah, the little miniature
is slightly off place, and Anthony goes out of his way to like reorient it, to fix it. Like, even from the very beginning, he's always about characters who need control, who need to like, who are obsessed with precision in their own lives. And I think that's mirrored in the style. The style complements what Wes Anderson is getting at very often. And you could not care for what he's talking about. That's entirely fair. You could be totally put off by his style and find it really like jarring and put you at an arm's length from his movies, make it difficult for you to emotionally engage. That's fair, but I do think the style is important. I think the style, like what is the saying? I forget. I think it's like the messenger is the message type thing.
Oh yeah.
Where like the form is the movie. You cannot separate the
part of the
style
theme,
from the theme. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so far up Wes Anderson's ass I can see out his mouth, but like I think the style is important.
Yeah, I don't know. I also don't know that the style necessarily needs to justify
Be justified?
itself. Like it's not like so distracting or weird that like you don't know what's going on. It's kind of like, I don't know. What do we lose by having this shot be symmetrical?
I don't know. Like
It just makes all the movies look different.
I mean, personally, I find it very enticing. I find it very just aesthetically pleasing. I could watch a movie just be pretty shots and be fairly satisfied, but I can understand someone saying or criticizing the film for like finding the films just visually jarring. They don't feel engaging, they feel alien, or they feel so meticulous as to not allow you into the world.
Well, also being a little bit alien and a little bit disconnected also ties back to like the themes of most of these movies, which are characters who feel alienated and disconnected.
Oftentimes they have some mental health issues, like Anthony in this one checks himself into a mental health facility at the beginning of the film. Moonrise Kingdom,
both of the kids are very troubled.
Basically all of the children in Royal Tenenbaums have some fucking issues.
Right.
Luke Wilson's character in that film attempts suicide, which is, I think, that movie's very jarring burst of violence.
Yeah, I think it could be fun to talk about how Wes Anderson uses violence in these movies, because all of them have like one quick outburst, and like I think Wes Anderson really hates violence is my takeaway.
I don't think he enjoys it.
Because it always looks so uncool.
Yeah.
Like, the characters who are doing the violence are never, like,
the cool
powerful
guys.
or cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of Darjeeling Limited, where Adrian Brody just chucks a belt at Owen Wilson's face.
It's very awkward, very
so,
goofy.
like, even Bottle Rocket, like, when Owen Wilson smacks Luke Wilson with the screwdriver. Like, Owen Wilson is not... He's lying down on the ground in that scene.
Yeah,
and he's also Owen Wilson. And he also often likes to put violence in the background, which also occurs in Bottle Rocket.
Yeah,
where
you see them fighting in the background, the brothers.
Luke and Inez are talking, and then in the background, Owen Wilson is getting into a fight.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that. I mean, you're right there, and it goes poorly for Owen Wilson there.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of the people who engage in violence a lot in the background in Bottle Rocket are Bob's brothers, the idiots, the fucking assholes.
Sure. Yeah, there's also that scene where they're hanging out by the pool,
house,
and like in the house we can hear them. You think I'm a bully? I'm bullying you?
Yeah, just the dumbest characters in the fucking movie are constantly squabbling. And in Grand Budapest, the people who engage in the gunfight are the out-and-out villains. Fucking Willem Dafoe. I mean, Willem Dafoe is cool.
Willem Dafoe chucks a cat out the window.
He chucks a cat out the window who lands like perfectly splayed out like a frog being dissected.
Also, I mean, I guess Grand Budapest is kind of violent. Jeff Goldblum loses all his fingers.
Decapitated head.
Yeah, that's true.
But like the big shootout scene where you actually see violence, it's the Nazis. The Nazis are shooting at everyone.
I also Moonrise Kingdom. Wes Anderson had a great opportunity to like have an action scene that is violent and looks cool, but instead
refuses.
He stops the action, just like the weirdest shot of like a close-up of an arrow with like a stylish red background
and safety scissors
and like maybe sound effects, and then we cut forward and the violence has already happened.
Well, that's another thing.
So I see Wes Anderson as like very averse.
He's not interested in it. I think it's very interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think in a lot of ways Anderson is a maximalist. Like, he loves to fill the frame up with props and artistic flourishes to make his sets feel lived in. He builds his sets basically from the ground up, and so he makes sure to like put a ton of shit in there. He has his brother like create art for the background, needle points and all that shit just to fill up the frame. But in editing, especially that scene of violence, it's like 3 frames of an arrow and maybe 2 frames of scissors, and that's all he needs to convey exactly
He's
what
like
happened.
completely disinterested in it.
Like,
he's
he-
like, yeah, something fucked up happened
He
here.
could meticulously frame craft that scene from the ground up, but he refuses to because he's not interested, and he's able to, when he wants to, be incredibly efficient in his storytelling, which I think is really interesting and a testament to his
speaking
skill.
of efficiency, something that Bottle Rocket does a ton that, like, I don't notice in a lot of other movies, but I'm sure it happens, is, like, cutting a conversation, moving to a new location, and just continuing the conversation. Like,
Yeah, you
nothing
mentioned that
even
when we
happened.
were watching Darjeeling Limited.
Yeah. He does that a lot, and it's super efficient. And, like, if you think too hard about how you're watching a movie, you're like, wait, this
This doesn't make sense.
absolutely
These
no sense
characters
at all.
wouldn't have stopped talking and then picked up the conversation exactly there,
But, like, just watching the movie, it just flows.
I was going to say, I don't think Wes Anderson is particularly invested in realism all that
No,
he's
definitely
not invested
not.
in realism.
But it's just interesting to me that is a trick that, like, even works so well.
Yeah, I mean, it just the flow works totally fine. It takes you to a new place, so the steam doesn't get stale. It's visually interesting in that regard, and like, I think it's just very interesting how hyper stylized he is when he was making movies at like the height of the mumblecore movement, when you had like guys like the Duplass brothers who were making like the puffy chair, which is just people having nonsense, boring fucking conversations about non-dramatic events. The shots were very like lo-fi DIY, almost documentary style, like shaky cam, people talking about nothing. It's kind of almost objectively ugly, but it's supposed to be like, this is how real people talk in real situations. There's nothing phony about it, except it's not a documentary. And Wes Anderson's like, I have no interest in that.
Wes Anderson, very uncynical movies.
Yes, just pure this movies that are invested in looking good and just telling stories. I'm very curious to talk about, and I know this isn't about Grand Budapest, but having revisited it and having seen Bottle Rocket, and you said you loved Bottle Rocket.
Yeah,
how
I
do you
really
feel
like this
about
movie.
Grand Budapest on the second go-through?
I did not like it the first 2 times that I saw it. This was the 3rd time I watched it. I still don't love it.
Okay.
I appreciate it, though. I think Grand Budapest is, at least for me, the least accessible Wes Anderson movie, and like is the one that to me is the most style over substance, even though we don't like that critique. It just, like, the framing device of the story within the story within the I'm just like,
yeah.
you could
Tell
just,
the first
you could
story.
just tell the story, and that would be fine. I'm not sure that anything is gained by like changing the aspect ratio all the time, and also just the characters. I just don't connect to them
I think
as
that's
much.
his most political film. I think he kind of there really ditches a lot of his most tried and true themes. Like, it's not about family necessary. I mean, there's obviously familial squabble in that the matriarch of the family does not bequeath her
Yeah, that's a good point.
belongings
But
to...
the movie is not about them.
No, it's about art and politics. It's about like the value of art. It's about the decay of society, and it's about how like fascism can never like co-opt art even when they attain like power. There's like truth and beauty in art that they can never attain. It's, I think, his most political film, but also if you're a hardcore Wes Anderson fan, I thought Rushmore initially was like his least Wes Anderson film. Like, it's, I think, the most broad of his comedies.
Yeah.
But thematically, it still has a lot of the hallmarks of Wes Anderson film. Kind of like deluded idiots trying to take meticulous control over their own lives, familial squabbles, people who are ashamed of their family or don't like their family.
Infidelity.
Yeah, there's a lot of his hallmark themes going on there. But Grand Budapest, in rewatching it, I'm like, okay. I mean, it visually looks a lot
Grand
like a Wes
Budapest
Anderson.
is beautiful,
But
it's
it's
like
the
one of the most, maybe the most beautiful.
of
Like, I
his
just love
films.
the hotel.
But
It's
like
really
thematically,
gorgeous.
it's not really so much a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And I think it's very telling that this film, which is the most grand, it's about art, it's about politics, is the one that
Word
got...
grand is literally
Yeah,
the first word in the
this is the
title.
one that got him his Academy Awards. It's
Yeah.
not about small familial squabbles, it's about art. And I think the
about
fucking Academy
more
loves that
about
shit.
society than any of the other ones.
Yes.
It's about society, man.
It's the Joker. It's his Joker.
Bad take. This is the worst film take. Grand Budapest
Fucking
is Wes Anderson's Joker.
IndieWire article written by David Ehrlich, why Grand Budapest is Wes Anderson's Joker. So dumb.
Yeah, so I still think Grand Budapest might be my least favorite, or Rushmore.
Those are his least Wes Anderson
I guess
films.
it's because I like Wes Anderson
Anderson
movies.
movies.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with you if for that reason. I love Grand Budapest still, but in rewatching it, I have come to understand why you would like Bottle Rocket more than Grand Budapest, because Bottle Rocket's a Wes Anderson film thematically, even if it doesn't visually look like one so much. A few passing thoughts before I guess we begin to wrap up.
Sure.
I just have there is just small Wes Andersonisms that I noticed in Bottle Rocket. Motorbikes, I notice, are recurring in his films.
Oh yeah. He loves goofy little vehicles.
Bikes. Dignan shows up in one. Willem Dafoe rides one in. He gets one from Lucas Hedges in Grand Budapest. He gets his own little bike.
Oh yeah.
And Lucas Hedges
Right, he
is
does.
in Moonrise Kingdom with a motorbike as well. So Lucas Hedges just shows up with motorbikes a lot. Breaking out of places, a lot of his films feature breakouts. The first one Bottle Rocket has a breakout. You have Owen Dignan breaking Anthony out of the mental health institution.
That's true. And then Grand Budapest has the
jail breakout.
Which, if the jail in Grand Budapest, I think, is the same jail that Paddington goes to in
I was
Paddington
gonna
2.
say, they look very similar.
Look identical.
Even the fucking
Just
jailhouse.
the costumes for
Yes.
one thing, and just like
They're
the
the
whimsical style of
Paul
like,
King
a jail.
aesthetically is very similar to Wes Anderson. They love symmetry. They love like broad comedy. I think Paul King and
They're
Wes
about
Anderson,
family, yeah.
are very similar filmmakers, and I don't think Paul King gets enough
I
credit.
agree. They're also colors, like
Yes,
both
the similar
vibrant,
color
bright.
palettes. Yes,
Yeah.
I dig both of their films. There's multiple breakouts in Moonrise Kingdom.
Oh yeah, of course.
There's, I think they, I don't know.
Fantastic Mr. Fox, kind of.
Yes, I was gonna say
More like a break in, but they also have to break in and out
Yes.
multiple times.
Same in Life Aquatic. You have to break into Jeff Goldblum's fucking sea research center, and you have to break Jeff Goldblum out of where he's being kept by the pirates. He loves
It's
break-ins
interesting
and
because a
outs.
lot of these plots, like you could read them and it would sound like an action movie, but like Wes Anderson is
not
entirely
care for
uninterested in the action.
The only time that a hero engages in, aside from Moonrise Kingdom, which he just doesn't show, the only time is Bill Murray freeing everyone from the pirates in Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. But I personally find Life Aquatic to be his worst film. I think Life Aquatic is kind of messy and limp and does not, it's not particularly paced well. I think thematically it's very similar to Darjeeling, and I think it's a very important bridge aesthetically between Royal Tenenbaums and Darjeeling, which is, I think, his first film where he goes full Wes Anderson aesthetically.
Darjeeling.
I love Darjeeling, but it's just the only time any hero engages in action is in Life Aquatic, which I think is his weakest film. It's just not interesting. He's not particularly good at shooting action, I don't think, in an interesting way.
It's been a long time since I've seen Life Aquatic.
I don't think you have to revisit it. I wrote in my notes when I was watching Bottle Rocket, they look like Brooks Brothers thieves. And I'm happy you brought up that they are not thieving because they need to. Like, there is no economic necessity for them to be thieves. They're not poor people. They dress very well.
Which again is a theme. Rich people who are bored.
Yes.
Whose actions are entirely explained by like boredom and a search for meaning.
I was going to say internally motivated,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
external
totally.
sources. Another note I wrote, interesting that they're trying to meet up with James Caan, who starred in Michael Mann's debut film, Thief, as a thief.
Oh.
So, just a small little thing. I'm like, hey, that's another tie-in.
I would
Maybe
be
we'll get
remiss
to
if
Thief.
I didn't point out that a theme in Wes Anderson movies is just the most fucked up noses you've ever seen in your life.
Very important. He loves guys with the jankiest fucking
You got
nose.
Adrian Brody, you got Owen Wilson. If you want to see insane noses in slow motion, there's
Come to Wes
nowhere else
Anderson
to go.
films. And Jason Schwartzman, I think...
Jason Schwartzman too also
in
has...
Rushmore
in
has a
Rushmore
very fucked up
especially
nose.
has a
He's
massive
grown
nose.
into his nose, which is why I think he appears less. His nose is a little too
Aw,
normal
sad.
now. He's too handsome these days. I
Gotta get a reverse nose job.
He's gotta get a more fucked up nose.
Get the guy who punched Owen Wilson to punch him too.
Just to fuck up his nose a wee bit. And I think we talked about almost every... Oh, there was Luke Wilson in a sweatband in this movie. He does wear a sweatband, which...
In Royal Tenenbaums, right?
He also wears one in this. There's a scene where he's wearing a sweatband in this film.
When?
I don't remember, but I wrote it down in my notes, so
I
I'm
believe you.
assuming
I don't
that
remember
he wore a
either,
sweatband
but
in this,
okay.
and he wears it
I'll
again
take your
in
word for it.
Royal Tenenbaums. Matching yellow jumpsuits. You would see matching jumpsuits again or matching outfits again in Royal Tenenbaums and
Right.
Life Aquatic. He loves that. He loves people wearing the same shit.
Just bright, loud jumpsuits.
Yeah, and that's just my... And I wrote, James Caan as a weeb is very funny to me. James Caan is a samurai in this for a time.
We see him getting, like, trained in karate.
It's just very goofy to me.
Also, he pours water on Owen Wilson's head so many times.
We also
It's very
forgot to
funny.
mention that he steals all of Bob's shit.
Right,
at the
right,
end.
and then Hank does betray them.
Absolutely. He knows the plan is gonna go wrong. He knows that Applejack and Kumar cannot be trusted, so he makes out like a bandit by stealing all of Bob's furniture.
From Bob's Discount Furniture.
Bob is very wealthy.
Bob's furniture.
From Bob's Discount Furniture.
So he's the only guy who I think is smart in this movie.
That's fair.
Hank
yeah.
is the only intelligent
And
man
that also
character in the
leads
movie.
to another moment where you can really see Owen Wilson's character growth by the end, where he's handing out homemade belt buckles
Yes.
to Bob and Anthony.
Yes.
It's like, you can give them to the crew. By the way, how's Hank? It's like, and Bob tells him that Hank stole all his furniture. He's like, all right, well, then you can give these to your friends, to...
Yeah, he's
Inez.
not...
Ah, screw it, you can give it to those guys. I don't have any hard feelings. And I think that also shows, like, Owen Wilson letting go.
Oh, yes, he's not angry. He's not so quick
He's not
to anger.
angry, yeah, because we saw him, like, really fly off the handle
Yeah,
multiple
Bob
times
repeatedly.
previously. Yeah.
Yes. Over, like, small... Like, Bob... When his brother gets thrown in jail, Bob has to take away the car, and Owen Wilson loses it. Dignan is not happy about that.
Yeah, so now he hears that Hank, like, betrayed them, and he's just like,
Whatever. It's fine. I mean, shit's gonna happen. Any other notes you have on Rushmore?
I think I pretty much got out on Bottle Rocket.
Bottle Rocket. Yeah, Rushmore's not the film we're
I
talking
could
about.
theoretically go off on Rushmore if I wanted to. but
We'll
that's
save
not
that
what
for
we're
a
here
different
for.
podcast.
That's for a second film.
Yes. Anything else you want to say about Bottle Rocket or Wes Anderson in general?
No, I think we really covered it for me
Yeah,
at least.
I mean, I went through my final notes. I like Wes Anderson. I think this is not his best film. I think it falls kind of mid-tier for Wes Anderson. Like, it's good.
That's objectively true. I just find it so charming, especially the parts with Anthony and Inez.
Yes.
I just love that.
They're very cute.
It just makes me smile.
Another thing we would see later in Darjeeling Limited, where a white person falls in love with a woman of color who is at their job.
Yeah, which is theoretically a little bit problematic.
But he pulls it off. He makes it
He
charming.
makes it okay.
Yeah, no, I dug this film more on second watch. It falls right in the middle of his oeuvre in terms of films that how much I enjoy them, but in terms of just a Wes Anderson film, even if it's not, like, visually his most, like, polished film, or he has not fallen into his style as permanently, thematically it's a very Wes Anderson film. The ideas that he plays with for the rest of his career are there. His foundations are already there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think this would be a good place to start
yeah.
if you don't know Wes Anderson.
Like, visually, it's
Like,
not
I think that's pretty
overwhelming.
rare for directors, that, like, the first one is, like, a good representation
start.
and very accessible for most people.
But it's, I think, one of his broader films, visually his most, like, easily
Yeah, I have a feeling that
understood.
as we go on, we'll see that most first films
Are
are
not
probably
this
the
good.
least accessible.
Yes.
And then they get, like, more and more audience friendly. I think Wes Anderson does the exact opposite. Where, like, Bottle Rocket, I feel like anyone can watch it and enjoy it. And
Yeah,
then,
get
like, we
something
get
out
to,
of it.
like, Grand Budapest,
And you kind of have
Isle
to
of
know.
Dogs, and, like, you kind of gotta be a weirdo
Yeah.
to be into those.
Yeah. Another thing, no stop motion in this one. He does
No.
as early as Life Aquatic, which is his fourth film. He gets acquainted with stop motion and doesn't let it go. No stop motion in this one. All right. So if we have nothing left to say on Wes Anderson and Bottle Rocket, I guess that's it for hopefully the inaugural episode of First Film.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, check out our other podcast, Commercial
Yes,
Boys.
Commercial Boys, you can
You
listen
can
to
find us anywhere. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'll put anything I'm working on there. I'm at Dan Finegold.
Yeah, I'm also on Commercial Boys. You can follow us at Commercial Boys on Twitter. You can email us at commercialboys@gmail.com if you like that podcast. And you can follow me at Aaron Berkowitz on Twitter. That's Aaron Berkowitz, like the 18th century politician. Yeah, that about does it. Hope you enjoyed. hopefully we'll maintain some sort of consistent schedule for this. And
Yeah, we'll see what our how quickly we can pump these out.
our abilities. So hope to see you again soon.
Jake, thank you for joining me. Audience, thank you for listening.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Bye.